So hopefully folks are seeing the slide, yes? Can I get a nod from Kate if the slide's up and good? All right, thank you. So again, welcome to the West Seattle Transportation Coalition's May membership meeting. Tonight's agenda is some fun conversations and a bit of board business, and we'll see if we come in a little bit less than our usual 2-hour time again, which would be nice. We've got a few different previous meeting minutes to pass, and then we will have our first conversation with some of our friends from Seattle Department of Transportation. A lot of us are aware there have been some recent bicycle and pedestrian fatalities really in several places around Seattle, but in West Seattle, SoDo, and Georgetown. And so we asked if folks could come and talk a little bit about Vision Zero and what they're thinking about what's going on and how they're evaluating progress so far and some questions like that. We will then pass into a conversation with one of our own members who does double duty about West Seattle Bike Connections and learn about their latest projects and why they believe safe streets are important for everyone. And then we will wrap up with some board business. We've got board elections happening. We have a proposal for a meeting schedule change moving forward. We have a couple of really minor bylaws changes, but we do want to bring them here and vote on them in public. Any other old business that folks have to bring up? New business, and then adjourn by 8:30, or like I said, hopefully we'll see if we can do that before. If folks are not familiar with us, the purpose of the West Seattle Transportation Coalition is to be a peninsula-wide organization working to address transportation and commuting challenges for the nearly 100,000 people living and working on the West Seattle Peninsula. We do this by securing support of residents, engaging with elected officials at all levels, partnering with government agencies like you see with our conversation this evening, and engaging with businesses, community organizations, neighborhood groups, and individuals in order to educate and collect feedback like we did recently with our Draft EIS 101 forum. Our goals are affordable and equitable transportation options, particularly in historically underserved neighborhoods, a transportation network that moves people and goods in an environmentally sustainable manner, investments in transportation infrastructure to match Seattle's growth. And then we've got a couple of priorities we're specifically focused on in 2022. As one would expect, we would love to see capacity restored quickly in the West Seattle Bridge Transportation Corridor. In the meanwhile, we're advocating for funding maximum mobility while the High Bridge is closed. We continue to support Sound Transit 3 in their planning, education, and outreach. And we particularly are monitoring the SR 160 Fauntleroy Ferry Terminal, which is doing a trestle and span replacement project. And we have a couple of board members who are actually serving on the community advisory group there. I'm thinking from the folks we have tonight, we don't have to spend a whole lot of time going over how to Zoom and chat and Q&A. If people have questions, we can manage that going forward. Chat is enabled now. And so I will continue here. It is introductions time. Folks who've been here with us before know we don't pause and do big verbal introductions with everyone, but we direct you to the chat window, which again is enabled now. We just invite you to, if you're comfortable, drop your name, your pronouns, or any access needs you might have, what neighborhood you live or work in the West Seattle area. And then this month's question is, how do you primarily move about the city? And do you feel that your trips have become more or less safe since before the pandemic? And if you didn't get an email reminder about tonight's meeting with the topics, as well as this month we had a reminder about the Washington State Ferries meetings that are happening this week in their open house. We'd like to get you added to the WSTC email list. So you can switch in the chat window there to send a direct private chat message to John Wright, who's one of our board members, and he'll make sure to get you added to the email list. And that way you don't share your email address with everybody in the chat. And really quickly, before we get to our first conversation, as I said, we have a little bit of business to do. We've got several minutes that we haven't approved here in the past. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to review them. Hope you did. But I would invite a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes for 3 months we have.
I'll start it to accept the meeting notes.
All right, is there a second?
A second. No,
All right, thank you. That sounded like Jeremy, yes?
A second.
All right, all those in favor of approving the previous meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. And for those who are checking out, well, if you're checking out this video, clearly you found us on YouTube or on Facebook. And if you're in person here and you'd like to find out what's going on with some of our past meetings, you can always go to our Facebook page and go into the live video section, or find us on YouTube. Unfortunately, it's this really awful alphabet long thing here, but if you go there and do a search for West Seattle Transportation Coalition, you'll see
see that you're frozen.
Yes, I'm going to take over for a moment, I guess. Michael was afraid this might happen. He has iffy internet tonight.
Okay.
So, but I don't have control over the slideshow right now. Let me try to fix that.
The next item, Kate, is the conversation with SDOT after we learn more about the YouTube channel.
Okay.
Oh, he's trying to come back.
Is he? Okay. He might make it back before
There he is, Michael.
hello.
Welcome back.
Yes, hi. I probably should have shared that I am out on the coast at the moment with some perhaps spotty Wi-Fi troubles. So I will just say that we are to our conversation with the Seattle Department of Transportation about recent bicycle and pedestrian fatalities and the Vision Zero program. We have with us Allison Schwartz, Vision Zero coordinator with SDOT, and Sarah Zora, Reconnect West Seattle Mobility Manager. I'll pull up the slide again later so you can find the website for Vision Zero. But I will turn it over to Allison, who I believe has slides to share with everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, let me share my screen. Eventually. Is it in? Are you seeing the full slide
Yes.
there? Okay, great. Yeah, so thank you so much for having us here tonight. I am Allison Schwartz, I'm the Vision Zero program coordinator at SDOT, here with my colleague Sarah Zora, who's been managing the Reconnect West Seattle mobility improvements. I didn't put this in the chat, but I'm joining you from the Home Central District. And I, just to answer that question that was posed, mostly walk, take the bus, do a little biking, and drive sometimes. So all the things, and also frequent the ferry on the weekends. So thank you so much for having us here tonight. I'm going to be providing an overview of the Vision Zero program, and sharing a little bit about our framework, our approach, how we prioritize our work, what the overall trends are, the tools that we know that work, and our current and upcoming efforts. I did want to note that I shared a similar presentation at the Pedestrian Advisory Board earlier this month, and I can send a link to that. It's on the Vision Zero webpage, and I'm also happy to share these slides with Michael afterwards to share with the group. I'm not just here to speak we're also here to listen to you, to answer questions, and to have a discussion together. I can't see the chat or anything, but my goal is to make it through this presentation and then open up for, again, conversation questions, things like that. But if something urgent, burning question comes up, please jump in or let me know if there's something in the chat. Appreciate it. And sorry, Sarah, I totally introduced you. Did you want to say hi? I think you've been to this group before. All good? Okay. So before I really dive into this presentation, I want to pause and take a moment together and ask that we hold space for the 174 people who have lost their lives in a traffic crash in Seattle since we launched Vision Zero back in 2015. And to also acknowledge the nearly 1,200 people who have been seriously injured in that time. This year in 2022, 10 people have been killed in a crash. That includes 4 people walking, 2 people biking, and 4 people in vehicles. I hope we can take a moment to think about their family and friends, and also everybody who is affected when something like this happens. I also really want to acknowledge that it's been a heavy past few weeks amongst these very challenging past couple years. So with any moment of silence, we need to stretch beyond words, beyond thoughts and prayers, and into action. As everybody here is probably well aware, 2 of the people that have lost their lives just this month I've had them here on this slide. Nicholas Wolf was just 30 years old when he was walking in West Seattle and struck and killed on May 6th. I know his wife was there with him too. And then on May 11th, Gan Hao Lee, 73 years old, was biking in SoDo when he was struck and killed. And this is a photo of him and his wife. So I think everyone in this group is probably familiar with the goal of Vision Zero, to end traffic deaths and serious injuries on city streets by 2030. I really want to emphasize the principles that are foundational to achieving this and to doing this work. Here up on the slide, traffic deaths and injuries are preventable. Human beings are imperfect. We are vulnerable to injury and we're fragile. And that we can't succeed at this type of a goal by focusing on individual behavior. We need to pan out to the systems level and design a safe system. And I want to be really clear that Vision Zero is more than a slogan. Ending traffic deaths and serious injuries is going to does require a paradigm shift. It means that we, instead of prioritizing the movement of vehicles, we prioritize the movement of human beings. It requires, alignment across all levels of leadership and by community. It means that we have community support behind often challenging and controversial projects that reallocate space in our right-of-way, that remove travel lanes or remove parking spaces for other uses, because we know that these are ways that can improve safety and slow down speeds. So we're up against decades of design and culture. And so this is going to take some time to undo and to redesign. So I'm going to touch the next few slides on kind of the trends, the overall trends that we're seeing and kind of who's being affected by crashes and where they're occurring. Overall, unfortunately, we are not making progress toward the ultimate goal of Vision Zero. Last year, 30 people were killed. 26 of them were not in a vehicle. The majority were people walking. And so this chart, it's a little busy, I recognize. The gray is total fatalities, and then the red is people walking or in a wheelchair rolling. The yellow is people in a vehicle with driving or passengers. The blue is people on motorcycles and mopeds, and the green is people walking. The solid lines are the true numbers of people who have passed. The dashed lines are the trend lines the projections based on what has happened so far. And so we can see the overall trend line is headed in the wrong direction. People walking are disproportionately affected and being killed at much higher rates than other travelers, and that rate is going up. People in vehicles, this is the trend line here that's yellow, that's kind of slightly going down or staying steady. People biking, it's going up, and people on motorcycles and mopeds is trending down slightly. The most vulnerable travelers, the most marginalized community members are the most affected. Again, this is people walking. This is older pedestrians. It's also, we're seeing in our data more unhoused community members, people experiencing homelessness are making up last year nearly a quarter of fatalities. And then we know from national level information and also from local.
I would like one in a second, please.
Oh, I think someone is off mute. Or I didn't know if that was a question. Okay, I'll keep going. I was saying that we know from national level data and also local that Black people are disproportionately affected by fatal crashes as well. And so where are the worst crashes happening? This map shows fatal and serious injury crashes over the past 3 years. The vast majority are occurring on arterial streets, which are often multi-lane. They're higher speed and higher volume streets than others. And then to add even more complexity to this screen and map, this shows that what's called the equity and social index layer from the city's Office of Planning and Community Development. It combines a number of factors, including race and ethnicity, language, and other health measures, where the purple and the lighter brown colors indicate the most disadvantaged communities. And it's these same communities that bear the brunt of the worst crashes. And then lastly here, I wanted to highlight that in the same 3-year period, so 2019 to 2021, nearly half of the fatal crashes in the city occurred in City Council District number 2, which is Southeast Seattle and SoDo. So if we want to reverse course here and see different outcomes, we really need a different approach. And this is the shift that we're trying to make from a traditional approach to traffic safety, which in addition to kind of what's outlined here on the slide, has also relied typically on enforcement and education as well, to what's called a safe systems approach. And earlier this year, the US Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg said here in this tweet, it's time for a new mentality for roadway safety. And his agency, the US Department of Transportation, issued its first ever roadway safety strategy, really elevating Vision Zero at the national level and grounding it in the safe system approach. So this framework is focused on these 5 key areas inside of this circle here. I'll just read them real quick. Post-crash care, safe road users, safe vehicles, safe speeds, and safe roads. The last 2 of which are especially relevant to our work as a DOT. Slowing down speeds is really a cornerstone of our work, and that's because speed matters in multiple ways. It affects how much you can see, how quickly you can stop. Critically, it affects how severe a crash will be, particularly for someone outside of the vehicle. So last year and the year before, we made citywide speed limit reductions, dropping most arterials from 30 to 25 miles an hour. We're working with WSDOT on changes to state-owned arterials. And, while we found initially that in some instances, putting in, larger signs at more frequent intervals was enough to get some people to reduce speeding in some areas. In most cases, it's the design changes to the roadway that are needed to really get slower speeds that we need to see. And so looking ahead, a key part of our speed limit and speed management work is going to be to really focus in on those streets, prioritize them based on speeds, on crash history, and also on equity. I did want to share a little bit more about how we prioritize our work and how we make the most effective use of our limited resources. So we've got 2 key pieces, and one is this high injury network, which looks back at the streets with the highest history of serious and fatal collisions. And we recently kind of updated our prioritization model to really put a finer focus on serious and fatal crashes and a higher weight on equity. And the outcome of this model is nearly 400 arterial street segments that are about a mile or so each. And so this darker orange means the higher the priority. So you can see parts of the city that are really popping out here, downtown. Again, this corresponds with the map that I just showed on the previous couple slides earlier, most of South Seattle. And also, parts of the North End and places in West Seattle. With our resources, we're able to work on about 2 to 3 corridors per year, from initial planning to design, community engagement, and then construction. So one of the most effective tools for slowing speeds is redesigning streets, also known as, it's got lots of names, road diets, roadway reconfiguration, rechannelization, and it's when we take a 4-lane road and change it to 2 travel lanes with the center turning lane. It's a proven safety tool that also helps provide opportunity for other uses. It reduces speed and conflict points, reduces the frequency and severity of crashes. It shortens pedestrian crossing distances, meaning that people walking are exposed to less vehicles when they're crossing. And then, like I just mentioned, it creates space for other uses. I've just put one example up here, Rainier Avenue South, where we've seen positive results. This is one of many road reconfigurations that have been done across the city. 35th Ave Southwest is another that's obviously closer to you all. And I want to highlight that this work is iterative and ongoing. And as I mentioned, there are 400 street segments in that whole map that I just showed, and they're broken into 5 tiers of priorities. So that first tier, we're talking about 80 street segments. So we have work ahead of us. The second key way we prioritize our work is using this comprehensive analysis of bicycle and pedestrian collisions, again, kind of with a focus on our most vulnerable travelers who are most exposed to injury and harm. And it also includes a number of factors that help us understand crash risk. So this guides kind of our more proactive investments, one of which I'll touch on here. A treatment like a leading pedestrian interval, which is a small, really not very visible tool that's highly effective. And it's when you've probably all experienced this at a signal, you're walking and you get a few seconds of head start of walk time before the driver gets the green. And this really small change to our signals increases visibility and reduces collisions and injuries. And we've really, as shown here over the past few years, really ramped up installation of this. But as you can see here, also still have some ways to go. And so we're going to be working on closing that gap. Again, this is one of many tools and in the toolbox, one of many smaller tools in the toolbox that can have big results. This is a handful of others that I've pulled from the Federal Highway Administration. Has nearly 30 proven tools for safety interventions, and things like high visibility crosswalk markings, intersection lighting, stop bars, that's the paint in front of the stop sign, bicycle lanes, rapid rectangular flashing beacons, which I wish we could come up with a different name for, but the flashing crosswalk signals, and things like this, right? So things that make it more visible and understandable for people walking and driving that people are here, and also places that separate different travelers from vehicle traffic. So our upcoming efforts, again, if I haven't said this enough times, we're really focused on the high injury network. Right now, my team, which there are 5 total of us on our Vision Zero team, we're looking at downtown pedestrian safety improvements. So a series of improvements at 50 or 60 intersections really focused on pedestrian safety. The team is also doing a pretty comprehensive analysis right now in the early planning phase across SoDo. So rather than just looking at one corridor, we see all the streets in SoDo are in our highest tier. So we want to see, moving forward, what types of improvements we could make there kind of more comprehensively. And then we also have continuing work on Rainier Avenue in the Rainier Beach neighborhood. All of these right now are in the planning phase, but we hope to and have funding to implement improvements in each of these areas starting next year. And then there's a huge planning study of the 8-mile long Aurora corridor that's being led by some of my colleagues in the pedestrian program team, but we're working closely, and it's quite a project team because it's a significant corridor to be working on, and that'll be a long-term project. And then lastly, and I think I saw West Seattle blog was here, and there was some coverage of this in the blog a few weeks back, or longer than that, but we have some funding from the State Traffic Safety Commission to do some education campaigns, and we're focusing on, again, speed limits and sharing information with people about why it's important to be going the speed limit and why speed matters. So we're going to be pushing out a campaign probably sometime next month. You'll see, billboards, social media ads, kind of the gamut of radio ads and all the things related to that. And then we'll also have a campaign related to stopping for pedestrians, and that all intersections are legal crossing for folks. This is my last slide. I want to end on a positive note that this is possible, that this has been done in other places, and kind of the shining beacon right now is Oslo, Norway. And I know a lot of people often be like, well, we're not Europe, we're not we're not Oslo, but we can learn a lot from other places that are making really great progress. And that's not to say we're not making progress. I hope that one of the takeaways from this presentation is that where we use the tools that we know work, we see improvements. We really need to scale that up significantly so that we can reverse those overall trends that we're seeing. And so in Oslo, which interestingly enough, in 2015, same year that we launched Vision Zero, it was the city officials there, the transportation staff there, they made a very intentional decision collectively to shift their paradigm, as I stated earlier, from one that was car-centric to one that was people-centric. And they also, really intentionally tied their safety, their city's safety goals and their climate goals together. And they took some really key actions around creating slower speeds, expanding their bike network, committing to a car-free downtown. I'm not saying that's where we're headed. I'm just offering it as an example of a place that, they didn't start from zero either. They're not quite where we are and where many other U.S. cities are, but you can see the decrease. And so in 2019, they had 0 fatalities for people walking or biking, and they'd had 1 reported fatality of a person driving. So they've gotten extremely close, and I think we can learn from them. So that's enough of me, I think, talking at you all. This is our information if you have any follow-up questions or want to get in touch. And I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see folks and move into question and discussion.
All right, I see Deb's got a hand up, so I think, sorry, Deb can unmute herself now, and then Kate, I know a few questions floated in on the chat there, so I'll let you look those over while Deb's asking her question.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Allison, and thank you, Sarah, for being here. I'm president of the Morgan Community Association, and Morgan Community Association, or the Morgan Junction area, is the location of the accident in West Seattle on California Avenue Southwest. And I am needing to get from SDOT some clarification of the circumstances of that accident, since it happened in mid-block, very close to crosswalks, lights, bells, whistles, all the good things. And I'm wondering if you can enlighten us about that particular accident. Was it indeed caused by an Uber or a ride share car letting folks out in the middle of the in the middle of the turning lane, or not, I guess is where we are here. Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Deb. So I just want to think about this for a little bit before I respond. We have the collision report from the police department, which is kind of the initial finding from the responding officer. We don't have everything, and they reconstruct each of these crashes and they develop really comprehensive reports afterwards, and we have conversations with them and try to learn more. But I don't want to misspeak or mischaracterize any of this. I do want to say that obviously, and I think this has probably been reported in the blog as well, the West Seattle blog, that it was high speeds contributed to this collision. Significantly high speeds contributed to this collision. I don't know whether, I don't think I can answer your question about whether the Uber, a rideshare vehicle caused this. I think there's usually multiple contributing factors with any crash.
Okay, and I think I asked that for when we find out the background and the reasons what caused this crash, if indeed it is something that needs additional training. Gosh, I think everyone has seen, whether it's rideshare cars or delivery vehicles, who could use some training. So I would hope that training about maneuvering, parking, signaling, all those good things. And I would hope that some of your toolbox items include massive training and in that matter. Yeah, very, very sad for this community. And I was at the same time that night because it was dumping rain and the visibility was horrible. I was on Fauntleroy, dodging people running into traffic there. So it was not a night to be doing any high speed anything. So thank you for that information. Also, I did have one quick question back to your points. You listed post-crash care as a tool, or it was in the list from several slides ago. You were talking about the different items. And what is post-crash care? I was guessing it was EMTs of it readily available, but maybe you could tell me what that is.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. And
okay,
that's one element of it. And I will, I'll try to pop a link in here. That graphic, that circle that had like the 5 different elements of safe systems is pulled from the Federal Highway Administration site, and then it's
great.
Lays out like in more detail what each one of those means. I did really quick want to say that I appreciated your comments just now on, essentially driver education of, all different kinds of drivers, including rideshare and, delivery drivers and everyone really. But one thing that I did not really touch on in this presentation was partnerships, and partnership is a huge part of this work. It's been a couple years since I've worked very closely with Lyft and Uber, but we did have some great partnerships, and some of it was related to a little bit of driver training, and some of it was also related to, how can we get companies like Lyft and Uber to subsidize some rides in areas of like high nightlife, so that we could give people a good option, so that they wouldn't get in their own car and drive after, a night out. Right. So I appreciate that comment.
Great, thank you.
I'll start going through the chat and the raised hands in order. So I've got a question from the chat. How many of these walkers have been injured due to being unattentive, such as looking at their phones, for example?
I would need to get back to you with like a specific number, but that's not the top contributing factors of crashes that we gather from those collision reports is generally driver distraction, impairment, speeding, and failure to yield to pedestrian. So that's how I'll answer that, if that's all right.
Okay. Kathy, I'll have you go next.
There. I'd like to ask Allison, is crossing mid-block as a pedestrian, is that illegal?
Yes, it is.
It's illegal?
It's it would be considered jaywalking, which is
I thought that
considered illegal.
between, unless, if there aren't two signals at either end, it's not illegal.
There's an intersection. If there's an intersection, you can
But it
cross.
wasn't a signalized intersection, I think, or was it, does it have a push button there?
No.
Findlay?
No.
Okay, and would some, recently I've seen news about people getting grants for painting up intersections. I know this accident didn't happen, this crash didn't happen at an intersection, but getting decorative artistic paint, like nearby there is the nursery, and maybe some street paint to, it usually captures the attention of drivers. When they see that street paint, they know something special is going along, and then they might not fall into their normal habits of speeding. You know, like a botanical paint near that nursery or something like that. I noticed when I live at 63rd and Emerald, and when they put those wavy waves corners, painted corners, things improved a lot for pedestrians there. So I was thinking that was something that we could use along California at some of these intersections that are heavily used and encountering a lot of problems that we read about on the blog of people trying to cross there.
Thanks, Kathy.
Okay. So if crashes and injuries are up, how is it your stats show a reduction based on your changes? I'm confused about these differences, so perhaps you can explain further.
It's a good question. As I mentioned before, where we are making investments, we are seeing improvements, but when you look at the overall scale of need, it is kind of outpacing where we're able to make improvements.
I was curious, are there any North American cities who have had success with Vision Zero in the last couple of years? And what are they doing that's causing that success?
Yeah, not the first time I've gotten this question, so I've done a little bit of research on this, and it's a good question. Thank you for asking it. Sorry, I didn't mean to disparage it. So the city of Hoboken, which is across the river from New York, is one of the few, if not the only cities that I'm aware of that has achieved Vision Zero. I believe they've not recorded a traffic death for the past 3 or 4 years. I will say its neighbor across the river, New York, has made significant improvements in safety for people, especially for people walking and biking over the last decade. But that nearly every city across the country over the past couple years, and even before then, we saw nationally fatality rates increasing. But over the past couple years, with the pandemic, with roadways on and off being more open, which enables for more speeding, cities across the country have seen an increase. Not to lean on that too hard, because I say this, hopefully it doesn't sound too harsh, but the bar is kind of low in the United States when it comes to traffic fatalities occurring on such a regular basis to compare ourselves to other cities.
Okay. Mark.
Yeah, first I was disappointed in your response. You know, I almost got hit in a parking lot because I was focused on my phone. Fortunately, the driver saw me and stopped. I mean, so a pedestrian does have responsibility to pay attention. But I want to get on the credible speed limits. Speed limits that are not credible are not improving safety. This is especially pronounced on principal arterials. And I've still not seen any technical study that supports the lowering the speed limit on West Marginal Way from 40 to 30 miles an hour. I drive First Avenue south quite frequently and south to Spokane Street. Why is it only 30 miles an hour? It's wide open. Speed limits that are not credible do not improve safety. And I'm infuriated that the city doesn't acknowledge using credible speed limits like they used to have. I don't see safety being improved. In fact, speed differentials increased. Safety's decreased. You can respond to that. I am an expert. This is what I do for a living.
Yep, I think SDOT has responded to you quite
No,
a
they have
number of
not
times,
given
Mark.
me a technical report that justifies this. I've done them. I gave them samples. They never gave me a report. They just gave me political garbage.
Okay. Thanks for your comment.
This might be a good time to jump in with John's question because it kind of ties in. So how do you slow people down? Changing speed limit signs seems to have little effect.
Yeah, thanks, John. I probably should have spent a little bit more time on my redesigning roads slide, but visually narrowing lanes and the roadway is really critical to reducing driver speeds. If you just think about when you're on the freeway driving and how comfortable it feels to drive fast in those wide lanes, and you think about when you're on a residential street and how much narrower it is, especially if there's parking on both sides, you know, it's really by design that we can slow speeds down, and also by, you know, there's things like speed cushions as well. In some instances, radar feedback signs can support some changes too.
Okay.
I think it works on minor arterials like California Avenue South, and you change it from 30 to 25. It really didn't make any difference. Where the real issue is on the principal arterials that you've changed speed limits without changing geometrics, and it's increased the speed differential. There's no credibility, and drivers totally ignore it.
Back to the chat. Australia has used very graphic billboards to promote slower driver speeds. Has SDOT considered making stronger statements to get driver attention?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Deb. I think New York City also launched kind of a campaign recently. I know they launched a campaign recently that was a little bit more on the I don't know, graphic side or just more kind of like intense side of things to get people's attention. And I think that the research is a little bit mixed on the effectiveness of that style of campaign. And you know, we are working with a consultant right now on our education campaign that I mentioned that's grant funded, and they've kind of advised us to not go in direction due to some of the findings that they have seen in campaigns that they've developed and research that they've done. So I think people are going to react in different ways to different styles of campaigns, you know, depending on who our audience is. So I don't see us going there anytime soon, but it could be a possibility in the future.
One thing this is Deb again, one thing for the consultant to maybe be aware of is that maybe they're not reaching the graphic or the in-your-face sorts of commentary, is not reaching the speeder who really doesn't give a flying whatever, but it increases the peer pressure, which is something that they may not be thinking about, the consultant. And so that's an angle that the very tasteful encouragement doesn't really get to. It doesn't really get that peer pressure in as an assist to the program. So wanted to share that. Cheers.
And also, has the city considered working with the state legislature for automated enforcement options, like speed cameras?
Yeah, so we do have speed cameras around a number of school zones. And then we also have red light cameras. The state legislature through this past session did expand the use of school zone cameras to, I want to say, I don't want to, it's like to be able to be within the walking and biking route of a school zone, which is pretty far beyond where we're able to go now. And so I think that's something that we'll be considering. But we are also, I had a back pocket slide related to our departmental work on transportation equity and our work around transportation justice in partnership with our equity work group. I don't know if this group has seen a presentation on that at all or has heard any of that information, but part of what my team is doing is a racial equity analysis of the city's automated enforcement programs to understand the benefits of them, but also the burdens of them and who is bearing the burdens of them as well. That's kind of vague, I realize, but I think there are always intended and unintended consequences to many tools that we use. And so it's important to understand what they are, and if there are opportunities to address those so that we can really advance safety and advance equity in our work.
And Michael, feel free to jump in if it is time. Is that why your hand's up?
It is, although I have a quick question to ask Alpha, and I think particularly responding to your last point there. You know, when the city looks at issues around inequities, you know, we look at data, we identify and show that inequities exist, and then we propose solutions to address those. And we don't just go, yay, all right, we addressed, you know, we addressed racism or, you know, like xenophobia or whatever. Awesome, let's move on to the next thing. Like we come back a little later, we look at the data again and see like, hey, did we improve things? If we didn't, we make adjustments, we make changes, maybe we pull back and try a different solution. And I think a lot of what we are hearing is that some of these Vision Zero projects that have happened in the last year or two, we've essentially just done a really big broad stroke across the entire city and then said, great, look, we lowered speed limits, check that on, you know, check that box on our Vision Zero goals and we move on. And we're not hearing how the city, you know, how is the city going back and checking the data? How is it making sure that, you know, is it, you know, when we're talking about speed limits, is it successful in neighborhood streets and in, you know, small arterials and principal arterials? Are we having the same benefits across, or do we need different things in different places? And so could you, you know, sort of to wrap up, could you talk a little bit about how exactly is it that Vision Zero is evaluating the changes that we're making to make sure we're having the impacts and we're moving the dial the way we want to?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So I want to, I guess, I'm not going to pull the slide back up, but you know, when I spoke about speed limits and the work that we have done to lower to put in new speed limit signs and that, I hope everyone heard me say that it's not one and done in that way, that we very much acknowledge and recognize that we need to pair those sign changes in most places with redesigned roadways, and that is going to take some time. So, you know, in no way has my team or anybody, I think at SDOT been like, well, done, moving on. We know that we have a lot of work ahead of us. And again, when I showed that high injury network, which, because speed is such a contributing, really one of the top contributing factors to crashes, to fatal and serious crashes, we use that as our guide to understand where we need to make our investments to meet the highest needs. And then we go and we evaluate when we do a road diet or a road redesign, we do evaluate, and we do understand that it's an iterative process. I'm not going to say that we're done with our work on Rainier Avenue or that we're done with our work on 35th, but because the scale is so great, we have to make, an effective improvement, evaluate it, and we also need to keep going in other areas too. And we need to seek, additional funding and opportunities so that we can make more permanent changes, put in more tools that will reduce speeding as well. So, I'm not sure if that's going to satisfy folks here, but I just want to make sure that I'm being very clear that we know our work is not done, and that it's a continual and iterative process.
All right. We took extra time because we got underway a little late and some tech issues. But I do want to honor our guests' time, and especially if they've been working all day, and let them get back to their loved ones and to relaxing. So I want to thank SDOT for once again joining us and answering questions. If you haven't had an opportunity to capture the chat, I'll be sure to send you guys the chat so you can see some of the comments and questions that were dropped in there. And thank you very much. And Sarah, sorry
Thank
we
you
didn't
so
hear
much.
from you, but it was good to see you.
Another time. See you guys. Thank
And
you.
Michael, again, I'll send you the slide deck for folks and a couple
Perfect.
other links that I mentioned. Thank you very much.
All right. So as I promised, for folks who want to learn more about Vision Zero, the website is up on the screen. You can also just go to seattle.gov and type in Vision Zero and it should pull it up for you. Moving on, I want to pause briefly for, what I always laugh and call our ads. For folks, again, if you didn't have a chance to check out or you didn't scroll all the way down in the reminder email, Washington State Ferries is working on replacing the aging Fauntleroy Ferry Terminal to maintain safe and reliable ferry service for people who travel between West Seattle, Vashon Island, the Kitsap Peninsula, and beyond. Terminal is facing a whole bunch of challenges, not just the fact that it's getting old, it's seismically vulnerable, etc. If you didn't get a chance to attend one of the meetings that they had, if you look here on the slide, there are opportunities still to participate. You can visit their online open house to learn more, and you can submit comments and questions between now and June 13th. And you can go to engage.wsdot.wa.gov/Fauntleroy-terminal. And with that, I will keep us moving. Our next conversation. So you've already seen and heard her, and you've seen her face before. Kate Wells, who is a board member with us here at WSTC, is also very involved in West Seattle Bike Connections, and I believe going to be more so, but I will let her chat about that. So we are going to have a conversation with her a bit about West Seattle Bike Connections, about their latest projects and why one of their key things is that safe streets are important for everyone. You can learn more at their website, westseattlebikeconnections.org. I think you've got some stuff you wanted to share, Kate, so take it away.
All right, hopefully this works smoothly. All right, can you see my screen? Michael, can you thumbs up or? Okay, yep. Great. All right, and I know we're running a little bit late, so I'll try to zip through them a little bit. And I wanted to talk a little bit about our history and our mission, since West Seattle Bike Connections hasn't visited the Transportation Coalition for a number of years at this point, I think. And our mission is to advocate for people traveling by bike in, to, and from West Seattle. We believe that biking, walking, and rolling should be safe, comfortable, common, and equitable. And safe and comfortable might sound like the same thing, but I put them both in the slide because just because something is safe by the numbers doesn't mean that it feels comfortable. And if a route doesn't feel comfortable, we might not get as many of the potential riders to try out biking. And you might also notice that our name is West Seattle Bike Connections, but here I talk about advocating for biking, walking, and rolling. And we've kind of expanded our mission over time. We still focus mainly on bikes, but we do believe that streets should be safe for everybody. And go on, we are entirely volunteer run. We have members of all ages, backgrounds, and experience. And I've listed out some of the reasons we ride. Almost all of us ride for errands at some point or another. And pleasure is a great reason to get out on your bike. Just sometimes riding makes you smile. Exercise is the primary reason for some of our members to ride, but for some of us, it's more of a side benefit. Disability. Some people who have disabilities that might prevent them from driving can still ride, and biking is a great way for them to escape the maybe bus schedules that aren't as frequent as they'd like and that don't go to the places they want to go. Some people ride for a predictable commute that isn't up to the whims of traffic. And also some of us would like to tread more lightly on the earth and bike when we can for the climate. And I have kind of gone through a lot of the levels of experience. When I first joined the group, I was a beginner. I barely rode when I was a kid. I got a bike to ride with my kids when they started to learn. And a member of West Seattle Bike Connections encouraged me to try to run some errands on my bike. And I found out I could do library runs. I could get some groceries. I could get to meetings. And I got more confident. And being part of West Seattle Bike Connections has definitely helped me become a more confident rider, but I'm still very, very cautious. Let's see, we're mostly an advocacy organization, but we do some rides and events. Recently, we did our Bike Everywhere Day station under the bridge, and it was really successful. I'll say we had a couple hundred cyclists ride by during the morning, and many of them stopped and chatted and wanted to learn more about what's going on with biking in West Seattle. We did a family bike and brew ride with about 20 of us, a bunch of kids included. We have done a number of history rides around West Seattle, talking about the labor history. We did one ride that was all about community and went to different community centers and gathering places. And these were all in tandem with the Southwest Historical Society. We have a parks and art ride coming up this weekend. And if that interests you, you can sign up through Cascade's website, Cascade Bicycle Club. That is going to start at the Delridge Community Center and basically explore parks and art along the Delridge corridor. And it is completely family friendly, very slow, casual ride. We have always done our mini STP ride. I don't know if anybody knows about the big Seattle to Portland ride. It is a bunch of people who ride from Seattle to Portland in 1 or 2 days. But we in West Seattle ride from Seattle Street in Admiral to Portland Street in Gatewood. And it's just about 5 or 6 miles. And we get lots of kids on that ride too. It's a lot of fun. We've partnered up with a lot of other organizations too in our work. We are the West Seattle chapter of Seattle Neighborhood Greenways. And there's another group that sort of inches into West Seattle a little bit too, that is Duwamish Valley Safe Streets. And they take care of the Duwamish Valley and up into Highland Park, South Park, those parts of town. And we've partnered with Delridge Community Center. We did a big kids bike rodeo where kids got to ride obstacle courses and do slow races and learn lots of bike skills. We have partnered with the Duwamish tribe to get their safer crossing on West Marginal Way. And we recently partnered up with Flip Your Trip. Their goal is to get people out of their cars and onto other modes during the West Seattle Bridge outage. And so we've been working together to get people on bikes. So some of the projects we've been involved in, I've circled them in pink on the map. And this map shows the northern part of West Seattle with some of the completed and upcoming projects. The Pigeon Point and 26th Avenue Greenways are kind of in the middle of the screen, a couple parallel green lines there. We worked with SDOT to figure out the best routes, the flattest routes, and fine-tuned the projects. And we also worked to get a southbound bike lane along Delridge, which is the flattest and nicest place to ride with all of the businesses and the library places where people want to go. We also recently worked on the Avalon Way protected bike lanes and the West Seattle Greenway, which is at the bottom of the screen. And that is a pretty safe back roads route that goes from the Alaska Junction down to Roxbury, past a number of schools and community centers and High Point and many, many parts of West Seattle. So the big project we have coming up is East Marginal Way. That is going to start construction, I believe, late this year. And we are working with SDOT on how to handle detours during construction. So next slide shows some of the projects we are currently looking towards working on. One is a greenway route from the from the Alaska Junction up to Admiral. This would again be on side streets mainly that parallel California. We would like to fill the gap in West Marginal Way, and that would connect the Duwamish Trail that runs along the Duwamish River to the Low Bridge and to Alki, and really connect a lot of heavily used paths. The Fauntleroy Way Boulevard is really a major bike route that would connect the densest part of West Seattle, the Alaska Junction, to the Low Bridge and beyond. So that would give us a really nice entrance to West Seattle, but also fully protected bike lanes. And a little one that's coming up is the Chelan 5-way intersection. Right at the Chelan Cafe under the West Seattle Bridge, SDOT is going to be reconfiguring that intersection, which could make it a lot simpler for bikes. It's a very complicated spaghetti tangle of trails and green paint, and it would be wonderful if we could get that simplified. And the last thing I want to talk about on this map is you can see that there are a few major gaps, like Admiral Way. The very middle part of Admiral Way has no bike routes, even though there are lanes on either side. Fauntleroy Way has little gaps, and sometimes there's a lane and sometimes there's not. And those are some projects we would like to work on in the near future. Then in the southern part of the peninsula, we would really like to see that lower part of Fauntleroy Way more connected, and just a lot more predictable for everybody. And the biggest project we would like to work on is an east-west connection between the Morgan Junction and the First Avenue South Bridge in South Park via Sylvan Way, which is a very dangerous road with disappearing bike lanes right now, and Highland Parkway, because as it is right now, if you lived in Highland Park and wanted to ride to Georgetown, you would have to either brave Highland Parkway, which is not terribly safe, or you'd have to go 5 or 6 miles out of your way, head north, cross the low bridge, and then go south again to get to where you want to go. So this could be a very important connector. It might not be the most heavily used, but for the people who do need it, it would be life-changing. And then my last 2 projects are in South Park, Georgetown, and these ones are in design. These are projects that SDOT's working on, a project that will make a safer path from South Park to Georgetown, and then from Georgetown to downtown. So just to tie it up, West Seattle Bike Connections envisions a city in which riding and walking are efficient and comfortable ways to travel. Bike routes serve the needs of people of every age, race, gender, income, and ability. Riding, walking, and transit work together to reduce the need to drive for most trips. And to this end, we're working with Sound Transit too, to make sure that there are lots of bike lockers and bike parking when light rail gets to West Seattle, because biking will be a great last mile option for getting to the train. And we hope that by making routes safer, we can get more people riding, which will help Seattle achieve the climate and transportation goals they've set. And we, most of all, would like to see a Seattle where the streets are safe for everyone. So I think that's it. All right.
Right. Do folks have questions for Kate? I guess this is also going to be a reversal. I guess it's my turn to look through the chat and pull up questions to ask you, Kate. So let's see what we've got here. Deb jokes, Deb Barker joked, comfortable means the comfiest bike seat, right?
It wasn't a joke. I was just saying that's what it meant to me, but what does it mean to you, Kate?
I want it to feel safe. A route that doesn't have the possibility of cars encroaching on it, that maybe isn't too close to a truck, say. Maybe everybody has their own lane and it really, really is safe, but is it comfortable to ride that? Is it comfortable to breathe fumes when there's a truck right next to you? Those kinds of things.
Or like lousy road conditions, mostly half gravel, half pavement, that kind of comfort.
Yeah, all of that,
Okay.
of that. Not purely safety, but comfort as well.
Okay. Plus a good seat.
Kathy Dunn shared in the chat, for anyone who's interested, more information about the Delridge Arts and Parks ride on May 28th. She says there are 7 of the, slots left, and you can learn more at cascade.org/node/77761 for those who are on the Facebook Live at the moment. And then Deb also wanted to know a little bit more about the Bike Connections logo. How did that come together? Do you know?
I wasn't around at that time. Maybe Kathy knows and could speak to that.
I believe that was designed by Don Brubeck. He's our Grand Master and founder, and he's still actively involved in the group. Although he and I are both retired now, and seems like the more retired you are, the less time you have for
Absolutely.
doing other things.
So,
But
so I get the bike, I get the tire, the bike hub there, and then is the color quadrant the southwest for West Seattle?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure I was getting that because it is special and I appreciate it. And it's direct, but it is lovely to look at as well.
I guess Don's not only an architect, but an artist too.
I see Kathy also shared for folks who need secure bike parking at SoDo Link Station. A reminder that there are bike cages there.
yeah, they're actual lockers. They're not cages. They're
Sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah, I
Yeah.
meant not just a bike rack, but you can
Yeah.
actually securely put your bike away. Yes.
Yeah, you open the box, you have a card, you send away for a card, you go online and buy a card for $20, and then you poke it in the hole, it opens up, you put your bike in it, you close it, it charges you 5 cents an hour, I think. And when you
Yep.
come back, you put the card in, it opens the door, you take your bike out, and it subtracts the 5 cents or the 10 cents or however long you've been parking. So if you're, like going to the airport or something, you could do that on the light rail.
And I think we're hoping to get those kinds of lockers put in West Seattle as well for safety reasons.
I would love to say that it's good to hear some emphasis on rolling and reminding folks that we're looking for not just safe bike trails to get between West Seattle and downtown, but pedestrian. I recently actually walked from North Delridge to a show at the Triple Door. And it's interesting walking between West Seattle and downtown and trying to figure out what's the safest ways to go. So the more we can do, the better when you're passing through industrial areas with large trucks that can't see you.
Yes.
Do we have any other questions or
I
comments?
see Jeremy's got his hand up.
Oh, yes.
So, Kate, you mentioned, trying to work with SDOT for routes on parallel to arterials.
Mhm.
How much would you say that the current SDOT routing for bikes puts you on arterials versus, separating you by a roadway of be on a lower speed limit road, a lower traffic road, like put the bikes a block off of California, the cars on California, and like now you have buildings as crash barriers. Not that we want buildings to be crash barriers, but they're pretty effective.
This is kind of a tricky one because many of us who ride are trying to get to the same places that everybody's trying to drive. We want to be on California. We would prefer bike lanes and no parking on California. Politically, that's not going to happen, right? So the compromise is to put the bikes on parallel paths where possible. I think SDOT likes to do this because they don't have to fight the hard fights on the arterials. So the side streets work pretty well when bikes get priority there through stop signs for cross traffic so that bikes don't have to stop at every single intersection because then that's not efficient anymore. Does that answer your question well enough?
So it's actually that they prefer it to be off the street, possibly for political reasons, or off the arterials. But now with the new
SDOT
stop sign
prefers
rule, it may be, in fact, even better for the cyclists. So those roads become a little bit more viable. Like if I'm walking and there's, Mercer Street in Seattle, it's actually safe, but like I would walk a block off of Mercer instead of walking Mercer because I just don't want to walk on a 6-lane road. So it feels to me like if you're biking, you'd also prefer to be a block off. Granted, we have a lot of places where there's one road that connects things, and
or
we
that
all know how
one
the one
arterial
road
is
goes, and there's no parallel path, and so I was just curious
exactly
what the as a avid biker, what the preference is and where you think the city goes with it and where they should. So,
Yeah, I think a nice compromise is when we can be one block off the arterial so that you can still get to where you're going. But sometimes the routing takes you way further off than that. So did Kathy have her hand up?
I was gonna say
Oh,
that one
there
of
you
the differences between the successful cities that have Vision Zero and working in Europe is that they make every street successful for every type of mode. And that slows down all the streets, and cuts down on the speeds. And we take the view that, well, maybe we can shunt the bikers over here, like what happened in the Delridge corridor, which is one of the few projects where they actually took out bike lanes and pushed people off onto a more hilly, 2 blocks away, 26th Avenue. And but the successful cities look at every single street and design every single street for all modes. SoDo is a disaster. There are hardly any streets in SoDo that there's modes for people biking, and the sidewalks are in terrible condition. So I think it ties in with Vision Zero that we should, and we do have a thing called the Complete Streets Ordinance that you're all maybe aware of, that is more done by the exception than the rule, it seems like in Seattle.
Yeah, I was going to bring up Delridge as well. What we heard, Jeremy, with the planning for the Delridge rechannelization was essentially, how do I want to say it? Essentially, we have 2 bike communities. And so we had a lot of folks, sort of more families, I'll say, although, I don't want to, we don't want to be too stereotypical, but let's just say maybe newer bikers, people with children, etc., who were like, I don't care what you do on Delridge. People speed there. There's too much traffic. I don't feel safe there. I want the greenways. You really need to develop greenways. And then we had other folks who were like, I commute to work. I have a bicycle that's fit out the way I want it. I'm comfortable taking the road. Who actually said, at least in Delridge, although I'd heard this with a couple of downtown projects as well, kind of said, we don't care at the bike lanes on Delridge either, because they said, we don't feel safe in the bike lane. We'll actually take the road. And so there seems to be a growing awareness at SDOT that they have to do both, that they have to look at ways to make certain arterials safer for people, because people are riding bikes on them, people are commuting on them, and it needs to be as safe for somebody commuting to work by bike as it is.
Uh-oh.
Wonky
I guess
internet.
Michael's gone again.
And not
Oh,
be on
there
an
we go.
arterial. Yeah. And let's see, do we have any other questions?
I'll bring up one.
All right,
I
last
know that
one. Take it away, Mark.
it's I'm a bicyclist, and I think Mike, you alluded to the fact that there's different, we call it, types of bike riders, and we'll call seasoned bike riders are not afraid to take the lane and just move along with traffic, whereas you got families with little kids that want the protected lanes. And so you mentioned that, hey, they need to design both. And in fact, myself, when I'm riding on 2nd Avenue going southbound, I actually just take the lane because it's actually faster than using the bike lanes, because you get caught at every other light. But my issue that I think is going to be more pronounced as we move forward are some of these e-bikes are almost like motorcycles, and they are whipping by regular riders. And I think there's a upcoming safety issue with the e-bikes if we don't figure out a way to maybe regulate them or remove them from certain paths. So I think the e-bikes, they work great for some people, need them, I get it, but some of them are little motorcycles and they can really fly, and I'm concerned that people aren't paying attention to that. So more comments than anything else.
And they are typically helmetless too. The riders are helmetless.
Don't even get me
Stop
going
it.
on that issue. I believe helmets should be mandatory, and for them to eliminate that law was a mistake.
I can tell you one thing that if you're a biker on a trail, a multi-use trail, and you're going over 15 miles an hour and you hit a pedestrian, there's a presumed liability in a civil case. The pedestrian, has more, the biker has to prove that they didn't cause the crash. But in a car going however fast that guy was that hit somebody, or that person was that hit somebody on California, there is no presumed liability. So that the survivors of that family, or a person who's injured and has a head injury, they have to prove that the car driver was at fault in a civil case, which is totally unfair in my opinion.
Yeah, I've certainly heard that brought up many times. With that, unfortunately, slightly downer ending to our conversation about bike safety, will keep us moving forward. Again, we want to do board elections and meeting schedule change, bylaws changes, etc. I'll remind folks, as we announced last time, that we do have board elections. All the even, it's a even year, so all of the even board positions are up for election. Oh yes, thank you, Deb. We did not, because Kate's here all the time, and not pause and say, as our guest, let's thank Kate very much for presenting and taking time to put slides together. So round of applause. And well, I will start from the bottom here. You will see that Kate is up for re-election as a board member. So we would like to keep her with us as well, just like West Seattle Bike Connections wants to keep her around. Our vice chair, Marty Westerman, as he announced previously, is not running for re-election, as well as position 2, Victoria Nelson, who's with us tonight, has told us she's not running for re-election. Deb Barker, who you've seen asking some questions tonight, is up for re-election. And slight change from best laid plans. Slight change from what I announced last time. I'm actually going to stand for re-election, as it turns out. I've been having a few conversations with people since I made that announcement, and that will lead into some of the change that we're going to talk about right after this. So that is 4, 6, and 8. We are running for re-election. We do have the position 2 and 10 vacant, as well as we have an odd numbered position 7 that happens to be vacant. As we remind folks, we have 11 positions designated for the board, but there is no requirement that they are all filled at any time. But I should pause to check if there are nominations for anyone else looking to either run for a vacant position or wants to run against one of the people who is up for re-election, and do pause and do a call for nominations. Are there any other nominations for board positions? Are there any other nominations for board positions? Oh, there we go. Board member John says we should nominate Tracy. I presume she would decline that, but I love the thinking there. That sounds great. She is at all of our meetings for the most part. Once again, call for elections. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to re-elect positions 4, 6, and 8 as indicated. Would like a motion from someone who is not one of the 3 of us up for re-election.
I move that.
I'm going to take that moving from Marty and then the second from Mark. So any non-board members are welcome to join us in voting for this. So all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? I'll go down officially as an abstention since I'm chairing the meeting and I'm on the slate. But
All right.
that carries and we will move forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Victoria.
Oh,
Yes,
thank you.
Marty, Vicky, do either of you want to say any parting words as a board member?
No, I just need to step back for a while, but I'm going to miss it. I think you guys are a great organization.
All right, thank you.
And I'm stepping back for a while and I'm admonishing you to stay scrappy.
I think we're good at staying scrappy. I think I can promise we'll do that.
Ask the tough questions.
Capital S, capital S.
Stand up for the peninsula.
So moving on, I would like to announce that we have a proposed meeting schedule change, and we wanted to bring it in front of the body and vote in public. We've been meeting every month for some time. We generally have a monthly meeting, and we also have board meetings, and that's worked out pretty well. Although we typically take 1 or 2 months off every year. But as I've been having some conversations with some folks and thinking about how we put our meetings together and whether we have a really great slate of guests or sometimes we struggle to pull together slates of guests, I would like to make a proposal that we move to a schedule of meetings every other month instead of the current monthly schedule. And so what that would look like is membership meetings would occur on odd months. That would be January, March, May, July, September, and November. That works out particularly well because we typically take December and often August off. So this would allow that to fit into the regular schedule that way. And then the board will meet on the even months. And we'll continue to have membership meetings right now, 4th Thursdays at 6:30 p.m. No proposal to change that. And the board will move to a meeting on that 4th Thursday as well, which will eliminate a few conflicts that we sometimes have. I will highlight before we take a vote. At the moment, we have Mayor Bruce Harrell invited for June, so we will probably move forward with a June meeting as well. Stay tuned for that reminder. But then starting in July, we'll move to this every other month schedule. Is there any conversation or questions about this proposal? All right, so I am moving the proposal as listed here. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, I see something. John says, I think it makes a lot of sense. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so I will state again, I believe
Pesky internet.
I believe he was going to say he believes we are having a meeting next month, and then July will be the first one on the new schedule.
That's a good interpretation.
Yeah.
You got all that from his lips moving. That is really good. That is really good.
I'm good at filling voids.
He's got very
Bylaws
expensive-
changes next.
Well, we're waiting for Michael. Are we going to, Michael mentioned that I could be invited to the get together though.
What?
Pardon me?
Yeah.
You protesting already?
Michael, now you're muted.
yes, where were we? So
yours-
yes, Jeremy, I was going to say that we expect It'll happen next month. I also want to point out that some of the conversation that I had with a few folks is this doesn't necessarily mean we might not do other events. This may open up the opportunity to do some more in-person educational forums or other kinds of things in the months where we don't have a scheduled membership meeting, as we would like to continue at least hybrid, if not virtual only membership meetings for a while. So hopefully look for some new ideas and changes coming over the next year.
Great.
That brings us to bylaws changes. So we have 2 bylaws changes, seeing as how this seems like the right meeting and time of year to do this. These are both very minor. The first is to Article 2, our purpose. In fact, it's sort of so minor that I didn't even take the effort to sort of put it out here, but basically over the last couple of years, our purpose, as I introduced it at the start of the meeting on the slide, you know, we've tweaked a word here, we've tweaked a word there, we've added a couple words here. And so essentially, we want to just update the bylaw, the purpose in the bylaws to officially match what we've currently been putting out the last couple of years on our slides. So that is what's meant by minor word changes to update language. And then the second one is literally adding the name of an additional agency. So in Article 6, we talk about, like, you know, who are we representing and what are we doing, which is what's meant under representational authority. And so in Section D there, we state that the West Seattle Transportation Coalition, in turn, serves as an additional transportation and transit issues representative and advocate. And we advocate to the City of Seattle, King County, State of Washington, and various federal authorities. We noticed that Sound Transit isn't mentioned there anywhere. And considering how much work we in fact do with Sound Transit, which isn't a county agency like, say, Metro is for bus service, and isn't like the ferries, which, even though they're a separate agency, are within the state of Washington. Sound Transit exists as its own sort of its own specific district boundaries, covering 3 different counties, and doing all sorts of different things. So we thought, oh, we should probably specifically call that out and mention them here. And so that's all that's going on with these 2. Are there any questions or concerns to be raised about this?
No.
All right.
I'm
So
good with it.
I am moving adoption of the bylaws changes as explained here.
Second that motion?
Thank you, Deb. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And any abstentions? And I'm glancing over here in the chat. I see that Tracy said someday, if she ever gets to retire, she'd like to get to advocacy. So I'm going to officially say right now, as current chair, that the moment you decide to retire, Tracy, which we hope is really far in the future, that we would love for your first stop for advocacy to be joining our board and advocating for safe and better transportation in our community here. So.
Here, here.
Plus she knows, she's learning the rules. Wait, yeah, she knows the rules. I loved your comment, Tracy.
Yes, and she says, by the way, this group might appreciate what happened to us. I'm assuming she means her and Patrick. During the hour or so we spend as pedestrians every day. We waited to cross busy California Southwest in Gatewood, and as expected, drivers seldom stopped. However, a motorcyclist stopped. We waved and yelled, "Thank you," and he yelled back, "You have the right of way. Most people don't know that." All right, let's hear it. Let's hear it for well-educated motorcyclists. All right.
Here, here.
All right. Thank you for that. That makes us happy, Tracy. So moving on. Is there any old business? I did not have anything, but a thing that I could think of, but is there anything I've missed?
It's old business. It's kind of old new. This is Deb again. SDOT finished pouring the structural concrete inside the West Seattle Bridge this afternoon. And so the clock is now ticking. There'll be, and Michael already said there'll be a task force, community task force meeting on June 9th in the afternoon.
Yes, there we go. I teed you up there, Deb. So yes.
Awesome.
You can see on the screen. That's when we're all expecting an announcement right now, is at the community task force. So Deb will be one of the first people to hear it, I guess, on June 9th. Personally, I noticed there, like, obviously I am not SDOT and we do not have any secret knowledge, but I do notice that if they were to make the announcement that day, presumably 6 weeks out from June 9th would put it at about July 22nd or 23rd, which is what we heard they've been aiming for a while. So we'll see if they're still on track, I guess. We'll know in about, what is that, a week and a half now?
You've got the curing, the 28 days of curing, and then testing that happens after curing. So, and yeah.
And paving.
Well, they can do a lot of stuff, the connector stuff in the meantime, but yeah. Pretty exciting though.
And so with that, is there any other new business that people would like to bring up?
The fiscal sponsorship is also, that meeting's next week as well, right?
Yeah.
Phil? Okay.
What day is that?
Yes, there we go.
Phil, what day is that?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I have to go find out. Hang on.
Well, send me an email, okay? Because I'm supposed
Okay,
to be
cool.
here. I don't need to know now.
I'll send my, okay.
Okay, thanks. Woohoo.
All right.
Oh, good.
Well, unless there is anything else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Hold
Second.
on. Before we go, should we take a quick poll on if anybody's available for a retreat, since just about everybody's here?
Oh, yes. It looks like
Or-
we're left to just the board. Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't I say, Tracy, you're welcome to stay, Tracy, but if you'd like to head off, you can. I will stop the recording now. So let's entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
All right, all those in
I
favor?
second.
All right, so we're adjourned.